Hello there, and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lavina Emma. Today, we will discuss a crucial issue that could significantly shape Nigeria's digital future, and that is the adoption of IPv6. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth is IPv6? Well, then, the acronym means Internet Protocol version 6, and it's a new internet addressing system designed to accommodate the massive growth in connected devices. Now, think of it as upgrading your house wiring system to handle a larger number of appliances. So the federal government plans to introduce the latest version of Internet Protocol called IPv6. Now, this will improve how Internet users and their devices are identified, numbered, and tracked in Nigeria. So this was disclosed at the IPv6 Driven Digital Summit under the theme Bringing Net 5.5G into Reality, Inspiring New Growth. And this was organized by the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, in collaboration with HAWI, the IPv6 Forum, and the IPv6 Council of Nigeria. So for Nigeria, this move to IPv6 is not about technical upgrades. It's about unlocking a world of economic opportunities. Now let's picture this scenario. Imagine a future in our beautiful country where every Nigerian, from the rural areas to bustling cities, has seamless internet access. Now that's something we would all like to happen for all of us. So this could boost e-commerce, improve education, create countless new jobs. But with these opportunities come challenges. Look, everything in life, there are always challenges. So cybersecurity is a major concern. So as we connect more as we connect more devices, the risk of cyber attacks increases. So how can Nigeria balance the need for economic growth with the imperative cybersecurity? So this morning, we will examine the current state of IPv6 adoption in Nigeria, cybersecurity implications and mitigation strategies, economic benefits, increased connectivity, innovation, and GDP growth. And I have an expert who shares insights on balancing security and growth. And the last but not least, the success stories from countries who are currently using IPv6. So together, we will break down the complexities of IPv6 adoption and its impacts on Nigeria's digital economy, from enhanced mobile connectivity to IoT growth. We will explore all the opportunities and challenges. So don't miss this insightful discussion on navigating IPv6 adoption for a secure and prosperous digital Nigeria. Join us after the break.
In the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, where commerce meets progress. Welcome to Soup News, your source for business, economy, and development insight that drive nations forward. From the vibrant streets of Lagos, Africa's fastest economic hub, Soup News takes you on a journey of discovery, analyzing and reporting the facts that lay the foundation for growth and development. With
Many thanks for watching the program. Now, our guest joining us virtually for this very interesting discussion is Olawale Adepoju. He's a cloud technology expert at Rakuten Group Inc. It's a company in Japan. So welcome to Market Insights, Olawale Adepoju.
It's a privilege to be here with you this morning. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us live from Japan. It's great to have you on the program this morning.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, so how's everything? How are you doing in Japan this morning? What's the weather like in Japan?
Oh, luckily in Japan we're actually 8 hours ahead of Nigeria. So currently in Japan it's about past 7 p.m. if I'm correct. So, and Japan is currently in the summer, so it's kind of we have an humid temperature at the moment. Yeah.
Hey, that's great to hear. 8 hours. That's really interesting. Okay, now the adoption of IPv6 for Nigeria's digital economic growth. So that's what we're discussing today, and we're talking about the benefits, the challenges that will come out of this. So first of all, now what is IPv6, and why is it necessary for Nigeria's digital growth?
Okay, yes, we need to look at it from the beginning. Now we are in a digital era where it's a kind of rapid growth when it comes to the internet and the digital growth generally worldwide. Now, in the advent of increase in the number of people who use computers, mobile phones, and in the area whereby we have data increasing enormously. We have AI, we have Internet of Things, which is the IoT, we have edge computing, we have cloud technology also coming on board. So we need to look at it from that angle. Now, looking back into the previous years, it's not been this enormous. So now it has gotten to a stage whereby we are running out. I would use the word we are running out of IP addresses. So previously we are actually on IPv4, and for people who are not used to the word IP, I would say IP is internet protocol address. So now we are running out of internet addresses, protocol addresses, and now there is a need to go for a vast number of addresses, and that's why the era of IPv6 is coming on board.
Okay, so to accommodate the large number of internet users is the reason for this shift to IPv6. Okay, yeah. That being said, I'm sure you also heard during the introduction that the federal government of Nigeria plans to introduce this to also track internet users in Nigeria, their devices, identify them, and how to number which device is doing what online. So now, that being said, so what are the potential economic benefits of using IPv6 adoption in Nigeria?
So IPv6 currently one of the basic benefits of IPv6 right now, if we look at the vast number of the generations of the addresses we would have. Previously, IPv4 is actually rated at about 1.3 billion addresses worldwide, which we've actually exceeded. Now, IPv6 will be taking on about 340. I don't know. The word is called on decillion. So that's about 2 raised to power 128. That's about 3.403 times 10 raised to power 38, which is called 340 on decillion. So and it actually works in hexadecimal. So it's bringing a vast number of addresses. And when it comes to the economic growth for Nigeria, IPv6 is coming with something called IP6, which is an inbuilt security. So Nigeria will be able to track, in terms of insecurity, we'll be able to track the users, we'll be able to track the internet activities. So security will be something that we'll be able to curb in Nigeria.
Well, that'll be very good. But before we start talking about the security challenges, especially online security challenges now, how will this new protocol also improve management and let me say, we have a high volume of internet users in Nigeria. So this internet traffic, now how will this new protocol manage all of that in terms of management and internet traffic right now?
Okay, so I would date it back to when IPv4 was actually being used. There is something called network address translation NAT. So this is actually because we were running out of IP addresses, so there was a need for introduction of NAT, which was actually more of like causing more of like latency, high latency for internet speed. So because of this, the speed of internet kept reducing. But with the introduction of IPv6, NAT would actually be eradicated, which would actually give room for increase in speed, and also connection limits would actually increase, and also network congestions would actually reduce drastically.
Okay, because You mentioned network connections. That's something a lot of Nigerian internet users have been complaining of in terms of when we connect to the internet, either it's not very clear, especially when we want to make video calls to someone living in another country. So, with the network providers now, do you think this migration to IPv6 will also empower them to provide a seamless internet services to all subscribers in Nigeria?
Um, yes, but I want us to look at it from the angle IPv6 is quite expensive, and that's what bring about the collaboration between the government and the business owners and the stakeholders. So there is a need, and luckily, in the last, based on research from Roland Berger, a global consultancy firm, it indicates that IPv6 could actually unlock a 10 trillion global market. And luckily, the federal government plans to introduce the latest version of this internet protocol, which is the IPv6, and which was said by the Minister of Communication, Dr. Bosun Tijani, saying innovation and digital economy in Nigeria would actually boost by introduction or adopting this IPv6 for network providers in Nigeria. So this would actually be a good collaboration between the stakeholders, business owners with the Nigerian government. And this would actually increase drastically a lot of things when it comes to infrastructure, financial services, financial businesses in Nigeria, and also internet. I will use the word internet can actually reach the remote areas or the rural areas, and also increase the stability or the I will use the stability of the internet for users in Nigeria.
Hey. Okay, yes, that's a very important point to consider. This having a stable internet connection in the country, for both whether you're in the rural areas or in the urban centers, it's very important for us to have a very stable internet connection. Okay, so now looking at this whole situation, this is an upgrade in our digital economy. Hopefully, we'll get all the seamless internet connection that we need. But now let's talk about this cybersecurity first of all. Now, how do we improve internet security in Nigeria with this ongoing migration to IPv6?
Okay, so there has been concerns of increased vulnerability in IPv4 because of the intermediary, which I actually talked about, the NAT, which can obscure the true IP addresses for devices. As we know, every device is connected to an IP address. Every device has a unique IP address in terms of it's more or less like you're labeling. Every country has a name. So every device, every mobile phone, every laptop has a unique IP address. So now, in bringing in IPv6 on board, IP, the equipment, devices, laptops, mobile phones would be easy to track. And also, just like I said in the beginning, I said it has an inbuilt IPsec, which makes security uh, a big deal when it comes to IPv6.
Okay, yes, I understand what you're saying, Olawale. But now looking at with this adoption, first of all, let me start with that. Now it
Mm,
has the ability to track internet users all over the country
yeah.
now. So don't you think this can somewhat violate people's privacy when using the internet?
No, there won't be actually any violation, because when it comes to IPv6 was majorly designed to protect against cyber attacks. For example, we stated that IPv6 has larger address space. I talked about 340 undecillions, which is a large number, which we had to look for a word to quantify that. So having larger address makes it more difficult for attackers to actually scan and identify vulnerable devices. Additionally, the built-in security feature helps to protect against various type of cyber attacks, such as man-in-the-middle attacks or IP spoofing.
Okay, okay. And in terms of, it has this new technology also has the ability to monitor how people are using their devices on the internet, whether they are buying or selling. That's for the e-commerce part of it. Then also for tracking people on. So there's a very wide range. I mean, millions, like you said, over zillions of people can connect to this. And like you also mentioned, it's being supported by the federal government of Nigeria. So pretty much I would say if the entire population, the entire adult population of this country wants to be connected to the internet, it is seamless and it will be available for them to do that. But don't you think that this will also lead to more people being in the event of being witch hunted by the government in that kind of scenario? Don't you think it also make it easier for them to do that? Before we talk about how it can also combat cybersecurity, first of all, let's start with that part.
Okay, thank you. So there is always a regulation in place for every association. So when it comes to tracking or tracking users' device or tracking the citizens' device, it wouldn't be done in such a way, I would put it that way. So it's more or less like when there is a challenge, because the government would not be tracking your mobile device for every action you take or for everything you do. But when there is a need, when there is a serious cyber threat to life or to the government or to the populace in general, then there will be actions to be taken to be able to track, the cyber attacks or wherever the issue is coming from. But the government will not be monitoring its citizens by the use of IPv6.
Well, we will still talk further on this, but now looking at
Okay.
our economic growth, you've also mentioned the benefits of IPv6 now. So, how can Nigeria balance the need for economic growth with the imperative of cybersecurity?
Right, thank you. So, just like we talked about, IPv6 has vast number of addresses. So the first thing will be, it would actually give room for economic growth by enabling online businesses and services. The vast address space and improved performance of IPv6 can actually simulate the growth of new businesses and services, including, e-commerce platforms, digital financial services, and also telemedicine. It's something we need to look into properly in Nigeria, telemedicine. So giving access to this vast, number of IP addresses gives room, foundation for emerging new technologies, and also looking at Internet of Things, which is actually coming up. And I think it's one of the things we need to look at in Nigeria as well. Internet of Things, automation, and stuff like that. So this would actually give room for emerging technologies in those aspects. And also smart, when it comes to smart cities, these are things that have been done in, developed countries, and we are still trying to meet up to these kind of technologies also in Nigeria.
Can you shed more light on the benefits of this telemedicine and other emerging technologies that we in Nigeria stand to gain with the migration to IPv6?
Yeah, thank you. So I think for the past years, back home when I was in Nigeria, there is this, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things are new technologies that we are not 100% or efficiently using currently in the country. And these are things that our youths stand to gain a lot for. If there is a right education, there is a right introduction to syllabus, there is opportunities for these emerging technologies. When it comes to Internet of Things, we talk about smart cities, we talk about green technologies. We talk about AI in general. AI is something that is actually taking over the world. Look at the examples of ChatGPT and the rest. So these are some things we need to look at, because our youth in Nigeria are very talented. We have skilled people, but the challenge sometimes is because we don't have opportunities, or we don't have the right, the introduction to this market.
Now, I'm looking at this whole thing. We've seen the benefits of it. Now, how much investment is required to implement IPv6 in Nigeria?
So I said earlier, I said that based on the research of Roland Berger, which is a global consulting firm, they indicated that about adopting IPv6 can actually unlock a 10 trillion global market, which is a lot. So migrating to IPv6 is kind of quite expensive, and people who are still using even IPv4 is still quite expensive, because migrating to IPv6 it's expensive as well. So, but that was why I talked about, the partnership between the federal government and the stakeholders, which are the business owners. It's not something the business owners can only take on themselves. So the government has to aid as well the business owners and the stakeholders. There has to be some kind of policies and regulations, funding and incentives as well by the government. There has to be some kind of PPP between the government and the business so that the government can actually aid them, and to transition into the use of IPv6 would be smooth for business owners.
Hey, well said. Thank you for that, Olawale. Now let's talk about device and network security. Now, how do mobile devices increase the IPv6 related security risks?
All right. Thank you. So I will talk about understanding how IP addresses work on our devices. Just like I said is a unique set of numbers assigned to each device to connect to a network like the internet. So for every for every computer, every phone, every mobile device, every IoT device, IP addresses are actually assigned to these particular devices. So it's like a set of communication rule that provides a kind of data exchange over the internet. So at its core, internet is like a connection of billions of devices, and they share data with each other through networking technologies, right? So for mobile, so to be monitored properly, because we are looking at IPv6 from the security aspect, that means for every device that is being introduced on IPv6 using an IP address of IPv6 would enjoy the benefit of the inbuilt security of IPv6, which I talked about IPsec, and you know new technologies that can actually prevent IP spoofing or man in the middle attacks when it comes to phishing attacks, cyber crimes attacks, and so on.
Okay, okay. So, do you think firewalls can, or can these systems be optimized for IPv6?
Yes, definitely. Because I can say currently there are devices that are being made that currently they use both IPv4 and IPv6. Because not every company has moved to IPv6 fully. So people are currently using both IPv4 and IPv6. But in the nearest future, hoping a lot of people would actually migrate to IPv6.
We'll talk about that. But before we talk about hoping more people will definitely migrate. Now let's look at the use of. We've talked about people on their mobile devices, but for companies, for larger organizations, now, what are the essential IPv6 security measures that organizations can implement with this new technology?
So when it comes to the I will use the word IP address in general for IPv4, IPv6 in general. We have um, we have the major concern, which is vulnerability. Generally, we have vulnerability. So, but for and one of the things that actually cause the vulnerability is having to introduce NAT, which is the network address translation I mentioned earlier, just to increase or just to kind of hide the private addresses so that they can give a public address, because we are running out of IPv4. So this is one of the challenges of organizations: increase in traffic. The impact on service, on applications, quality of service, and also scalability issue, which is one of the fundamentals, one of the major challenge. Business and service providers may face challenges in scaling their networks to accommodate new users and device. So these are the major challenges organizations are actually facing when it comes to internet protocol. And IPv6 is coming to challenge and say, I can solve these issues for you.
Still on this training and awareness and also more of the security for IPv6 now. So what trainings and awareness programs are necessary for IPv6 security?
Thank you. So the government has a role in IPv6 education in Nigeria. So the first thing is the curriculum development. The youth, the emerging youth, which are actually the future of the country, needs to first understand what is being done and what will be done in the future. They need to understand where we are coming from, where we had, and where we are going when it comes to technologies like this. So I will talk about the curriculum development. The government can work with education institutions to integrate IPv6 training into the curriculum for maybe computer science and engineering programs, because I would say IPv4 has lasted us years, decades, and for the next 50 years or more, IPv6 would be what we'll be using by then because of the vast number of addresses. So I will talk about curriculum development. It needs to be integrated into maybe the curriculum for computer science and engineering program generally, so that this can actually ensure that the next generation of IT professional is well versed in IPv6. And also too, I will talk about professional training programs. The government can actually bring about professional training programs for establishing professional training programs and maybe certification courses for current IT professionals that can bridge the knowledge gap between those that want to learn and those who are already in the system. So the knowledge gap can actually be bridged, and the government can actually partner with technology providers and educational institutions to offer these programs. Also, public awareness campaigns, because we're talking about IPv4, IPv6, but a lot of people would actually tell you, how does that concern them? But the fact of the matter is, since you use a mobile device, you use a laptop, you use the internet, which everybody does now. Everybody's on TikTok or one social media or the other. So it actually concerns you. So, the public awareness campaign, raising awareness about the importance of IPv6 among businesses, among general public is actually crucial. And the government can actually run campaigns to educate stakeholders about the benefit and necessities of transitioning into IPv6.
Hey, thank you for that, Olawale. Now, what are the security implications of IPv6 tunneling mechanisms? For example, CCTV systems and other systems that we use, these wireless technologies that we use, what are the security implications for this migration to IPv6?
Okay, so one of the security implication is improved internet performance, because the CCTV also uses internet, right? So I will talk about improved internet performance, efficient routing, because IPv6 actually simplifies routing tables and routing efficiencies. I don't know if maybe we're talking in the more technical terms now. So I'll talk about the routing tables. All right, sorry, I lost you there.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I said let's simplify
Yes.
it a bit. Let's simplify the technical terms.
Yes. Okay, so I was talking about efficient routing, and I talked about the routing table and the routing efficiencies. With when we talk about routing table, it's like, what are we routing, right? So when it comes to technology or IP addresses, or the security generally, in depth of technology now. So there's a way you route this internet. There's a way you route IP addresses. I'm chatting with you. You have a different IP address on your mobile device. I have a different IP address, and we're chatting from different locations. So there is a routing going on. You know, uh, we are only seeing the abstract level. So deeper, at the deeper surface, there is a routing going on when it comes to security or the networking. So that was why I mentioned the routing table and improved in routing efficiency. So that means we can actually the internet is more fast. There is an improved internet performance. So this means that data, the data packet which is being sent when I send you a message and you receive it at your end, there is a data packet that is actually being exchanged. They travel at a more direct, and they are very direct and very quick across the network, hereby reducing latency and improving overall internet speed.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Now let's talk about how Nigerian satellites. Yes, as you know, we have a satellite in Nigeria, and its 15-year lifespan will expire in 2026. Now, how do we partner? Well, what would you advise in terms of partnering with global investors and collaborators to support the replacement of Nigeria's current satellite? That's the NG ComSat 1R, which is set to complete its 15 years lifespan in 2026.
Yes, thank you. So I think NG ComSat 1R would actually complete its 15 years lifespan in 2026, and the government or the company is actually actively looking for global investors and collaborators to support the replacement of the project, if I'm right. So I think NG Concert partnered with Hotspot Network Limited to enhance internet connectivity in rural areas across Nigeria. So I think it's one of the things the government has to look at, bringing in investors into both the local investors and the international investors to partner on this project, because having these satellite being launched in Nigeria for Nigeria would actually have a greater effect, or have a positive effect on Nigeria, because one, internet can actually be used in rural areas. There would actually be wide or more broad of connectivity across the country as a whole. So because now we have, even though there are great number of users or a lot of number of internet users in Nigeria, we still haven't reached that goal, because we still have in some rural areas, some areas whereby you have fluctuation of internet. People go to the mountain to, just because they want to make phone calls, or download just a few megabytes of data, of videos. So having investors partner in this would actually go a longer way for people who actually need, or in rural areas, so that internet can actually cover across the country.
Okay. Now, still on the government and what steps they should take now. So, what policy do you advise the government to adopt to ensure that our network providers comply with this new migration?
So so the government has a role in when it comes to policies, investing in IPv6 infrastructure we're talking about. So there has to be policies and regulation in place. The government can create a conducive policy environment that mandates maybe the adoption of IPv6, for example, whereby we know it's actually going to give us or do a greater good for the country as a whole and for the people. So these include like setting deadlines for public and private sectors to transition from IPv4 to IPv6, and providing guidelines for implementation. And nevertheless, don't forget, I mentioned it's not something business owners can actually do alone. There has to be some kind of collaboration and partnership, because if I mention there should be a deadline for public and private sectors to transition from IPv4 to IPv6, and I said it costs a lot of money. So it's like, how do people actually get this? How do people actually fund this? So there has to be a kind of collaboration between the government and the stakeholders or business owners. So, and when there is that kind of collaboration, there can actually be policies and regulation in place and guidelines for implementation. Also, I mentioned about funding and incentives as well. So, investing in IPv6, maybe by the government, requires IPv6 actually requires significant financial resource. So the government can actually allocate funds for upgrading public sector networks, and offer incentives such as maybe tax breaks or grants to private companies that invest in IPv6, maybe compatible technologies. Also, also public sector leadership, because one, there has to be a leadership. So by upgrading the government upgrading its own network to IPv6, the government can actually lead by example, which is very essential. When people see you're doing it, and we are seeing the effect, just like we talked about the satellite, we are seeing the effect, then people can actually demonstrate commitment, and also provide, maybe the government provide a kind of testing environment or test ground for best practices, and can be shared with private sectors, and then people can actually come on board.
Okay, thank you for that, Olawale. Now, yes, you mentioned businesses and also private individuals now. So, what role should the government play in driving IPv6 adoption, and what incentives can be provided to businesses and individuals? Because, like you mentioned, this is a very expensive venture. So, we want to, as much as possible, make this very, I would say, at a very reduced cost to a lot of citizens in the country. So, your thoughts on this?
So, as I mentioned earlier, the transition to IPv6 is not just a technical upgrade. It has to be a strategic move that will position Nigeria for maybe future growth in the digital economy. And the government's role in investing in infrastructure and education is very crucial. But the success of transition hinges on the effective collaboration between the government, business, and technology providers. And by working together, these stakeholders can ensure a smooth and efficient transition to IPv6. And just like you said, how can the government actually make sure people have, how can the government help or aid? I talked about funding and incentives. Government can actually maybe grant in a form of grants. The government can actually give grants to private sectors and give grants to yeah give grants for upgrading public sector network as well, so that when they give grants to private companies that invest in IPv6 compatible technologies, and saying, okay, if you, just like I mentioned, policies and regulation. If you go towards IPv6, if you're migrating to IPv6, there are incentives in form of grants. I believe this would actually help growing businesses that want to but cannot afford the cost.
Hey, well said. Now looking at this new technology and all the benefits it stands to gain. So, how will this IPv6 security evolve in the next, let's say, 5 years, for example?
So currently the standard this is a standard used globally. I think only a few countries currently are adopting IPv6 heavily. We have the United States, we have France, we have Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and a few other countries are trying to catch up. So I talked about the vast IP address, the vast addresses. So IPv4 has been in from 1980s, and IPv6 was actually done in about 1995, but it was regulated in 2017. So not just 5 years, in the next maybe 50 years, IPv6 would be what we would be using. So since noting that other countries are trying to, bring over, countries are trying to go into IPv6. So I think for Nigeria, it's a time we need to start doing things like this, because for the future of the digital future of our country solely relies on this.
Okay, thank you very much for all this you have shared with us on the benefits of this new technology migrating from IPv4 to IPv6 now. Okay, so now with more companies also getting wind of this great news in for our digital economic growth in the country now. So how can more companies balance this adoption with other cybersecurity concerns that they may have? As you know, we are often plagued by issues of fraud online and people having to use different, like for example, AI to create a scenario that isn't very real. So can I migrate it to IPv6? Will you be able to identify all these threats and ensure that there are better counter security measures for scenarios like this?
Thank you. So I think I once spoke to someone about the current challenge we have about when it comes to cybersecurity issues and stuff like that. So currently, when it comes to IPv6, I talked about the vast number of addresses. I talked about, combating issues when it comes to cyber attacks. We'll be able to track cyber attacks better, the IP spoofings better. But with the current situation of the country, when it comes to, enhanced, I'll use the word enhanced technology when it comes to migrating to things like IPv6, we'll be able to combat those things, and not just combat them, we'll be able to identify them. But it is not, I won't go without saying it is not enough to transition to the use of IPv6. So it's not enough to just say we want to use the technology, but what are we doing? Or we have the technology, but what are we doing with the technology? So that would be the word. What are we doing? If we transition to IPv6, what are we doing with IPv6? Are we training people to use this very well? Are we training people to be able to combat cyber attacks? Are we training people to understand the use of the technology at hand? So I believe with this understanding of how the technology works, why the technology, and the technical know-how of the technology, will be able to combat security issues better.
Okay. Okay, well said. Thank you so much for your time with us, Olawale. Just before we round up the program now, can you just share your final words on this digital, how this will also help us in Nigeria, and last words on it, please, before we round up?
Thank you very much for your time. So, as a country in Nigeria, I believe we have the whole resource, we have the technology, we have the people, we have the skills. So it's left to us as a nation to embrace this technology at hand. And I was so happy when I read about, our Minister for Communication, Dr. Bosun Tijani, very much interested in IPv6, because this technologies has been there, but we need, vibrant minds like our Minister of Communication to actually know that these are things we need to combat security issues in Nigeria. We need these things to be able to, it's not just enough that people are on social media, but you need to look at the number of people who have access to this internet. We need to look at the number of people who the internet is there for us to use. People are making money on the internet, but when we have extensive knowledge about it, and it reaches people in the rural area, not just only people in, the urban area alone, then I think it would be very great for the country as a whole.
Many thanks for your time with us, Olawale Adepoju, a cloud technology expert at Rakuten Group Incorporated, live from Japan. Many thanks for joining us on Market Insight this morning. It's been great having you here, and we hope you can join us again on the program.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm so delighted to be here.
Okay, now let's look at the money markets this morning. How the naira is faring, selling, when the dollar is selling, the pound sterling, and the euro. So we're going to look at the Central Bank of Nigeria rates and the parallel market rates. So this morning, the dollar is currently selling at 1,525 naira to $1. That's the CBN rate, and at the parallel market rate, it's selling for 1,589 naira to $1. That's the parallel market figure. For the pound sterling, it's selling at 1,968 naira to £1 at the CBN rate. The parallel market rate is 2,102 naira to £1. And for the euro, it's currently selling at 1,731 naira to €1. The CBN rate. The parallel market figure is 1,771 naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning, and the parallel market figures are higher than the CBN rate figures. So many thanks for watching the program Market Insights, as we talked about the benefits of moving to IPv6, that's Internet Protocol version 6, and how this will benefit the Nigerian digital economy. And our guest, Olawale Adepoju, a cloud technology expert, shared his insights on this. And as you know, the future of Nigeria's digital economy hangs in the balance. So it's time for the government, businesses, and citizens to come together to embrace IPv6. Now, the stakes are high, but the potential rewards are even greater. So let's build a digital Nigeria that is secure, prosperous, and connected to the world. Many thanks for watching the program Market Insights. Do stay tuned to the news updates on Sook News Television. I am Lavina Emma.